Okay, what if I tell you that the extraterrestrials we all imagine as little green men may actually look like very normal Earthlings and chill in Europe? This is the Iberian Peninsula, and people living there are under suspicion. Ooh. Here's the reason. Somehow, parts of the most important artifacts that the Iberian civilization called Treasure of Valena are made of metal that simply can't be found on Earth, because it's metal from a meteorite. Now let's tackle this step by step. This is the artifact itself, and it's composed of 59 different objects. Bowls, bottles, and bracelets. Is there a pattern there with all those bees? In total, the find weighs around 20 pounds, of which 18 pounds are 23.5 karat gold. Now, if you're not a metal specialist, I'll clarify it for you right away. For comparison, 23 karat gold is 95.8% pure gold, so 23.5 karat is even purer. The remaining percentage goes to other metals to help add strength and durability to the precious alloy. There was also silver, iron, and amber in that set. The artifact could have been pretty straightforward, but for these two, let's call them imposters. Look at this wrought iron bracelet and this hollow hemisphere. Can you see that? Those rusty lines on the hemisphere and the overall weird color of the bracelet do stand out, since everything else is made of purest gold. This all started back in 1963, when a researcher noticed a dark leaden metal among the shiny bowls and bottles. The metal was shiny in some areas and covered with a ferrous-looking oxide that was mostly cracked. Now, just so you understand, gold does not usually act this way. Gold is one of the least reactive of all metals, so it won't even tarnish, let alone rust. To figure out where this suspicious iron came from, researchers turned to mass spectrometry, which checks out the mass-to-charge ratio of molecules. Their findings showed that the nickel in the iron is similar to that found in meteoritic iron. Simply put, the bracelet and the hemisphere are of extraterrestrial origin. Ooh. Now, the exact age of the trove is hard to determine, yet it's crucial. We need to know the exact age to see if it coincides with the start of the Iron Age in the Iberian Peninsula. If it does, then no further questions here. But if it doesn't, well, it's, at the very least, weird, if not suspicious. So there's this three-age system. It comprises the Stone Age, then the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. The Stone Age is of no importance here, so let's compare the Bronze and the Iron Ages. The Bronze Age began when it was realized that combining copper and tin produced a material that was more durable than either metal alone. This era was all about major upgrades in tools and weapons, but two standout inventions were writing systems and the wheel. Then came the Iron Age. This time was all about slowly bringing iron into everyday life. Iron was way easier to shape into cool designs than bronze. Now, this was a big deal, because iron, especially transformed into steel, provided significant improvements in all aspects of life. Tools became lighter, cheaper, and stronger compared to their bronze equivalents. You get it? Good. So, researchers have long debated whether the treasure dates back to the post-Argaric era or the latter part of the Bronze Age. The most recent study claims that those artifacts were created in 1400 to 1200 BCE, and something really doesn't add up. First off, the Iron Age began around 500 years after these artifacts were crafted. Plus, ancient craftsmen couldn't know back then how to work with metals that landed on Earth approximately 1 million years ago. And while the dates are really hard to explain, there is a logical explanation for the craftsmanship. The theory here is that those metal workers simply had access to the fallen meteorite, and thus, they could study it well and discover its properties before using it for decorative purposes. They could have figured it out through trial and error, and once they knew exactly how to work with this extraterrestrial metal, they proceeded to adorn the artifacts with it. Plus, there were the Phoenicians, who contributed to their craftsmanship. Now, it's true that the Iberian people have been processing metal and making pottery long before the Phoenicians settled on the peninsula. But the arrival of new metalworking techniques and the introduction of the potter's wheel enabled them to produce better quality goods much faster than before. So, we figured out the extraterrestrial origins of the Iberian artifacts. But guess what? This area is still under suspicion. The reason for that is the language they spoke. You see, for most modern languages people use today, there will always be some proto-language. Say for Italian, Spanish, and French, it's Latin, hence their similarities. But wait, Iberian was largely spoken where modern Spain is. So why isn't Spanish similar to it? Well, the truth is, no language today is similar to the Iberian. Maybe only the Basque language, but it's because of some similarities found in their numerical systems. Basque is classified as a language isolate, or simply unrelated to any other known languages, and the only language isolate in Europe. The Iberian language is unclassified. While the scripts written in it have been deciphered to various extents, the language itself remains largely unknown. And look at the alphabet the Iberians had. Looks like it doesn't really belong to our planet. But hold up, this one might be a bit of a stretch. When the Phoenicians came to the peninsula, they brought along their alphabet to the Iberians. But honestly, the Iberians probably weren't keen on just copying someone else's writing system, so they tweaked it until it looked completely different. Let's just say they took some inspiration and ran with it. While linguists can guess to some extent how most characters sounded, actually translating the language is still completely impossible. The Iberian language was non-Indo-European and faded away over 2,000 years ago. And there aren't any similar languages left to help us out. Super frustrating, right? Yeah. We got over 2,000 Iberian inscriptions from tombs, coins, potteries, lead plates, and even cave wall carvings. But aside from a handful of words, we're totally in the dark about what they mean. Now, if we could understand their language, we might have learned that they were great thinkers and all, but we can only contemplate the works of art they left. Iberian culture has a lot of amazing stuff made by talented artisans. We're talking about not just metalwork and ceramics, but also detailed sculptures, textiles, jewelry, and other personal bling. But here's the catch. Making all those luxury items depended a lot on a big farming class. At the heart of Iberian society, most folks were involved in farming and taking care of livestock. Depending on where you were, the types of farming varied. For example, up in the north, they were all about growing grains, while down in Valencia, they focused on producing olive oil and other agricultural aspects. In the west, raising animals was the name of the game. Still, we don't have much information about the day-to-day lives of the many people doing this essential work. Yet, on the flip side, we know a lot about the upper class of Iberian society, who control these agricultural resources and hire the artisans. By the 7th century BCE, we start to see a group of Iberian princes who were living the good life, trading with the Phoenicians and enjoying fancy luxury items. You can spot this elite class in their burial practices. Cremation was the go-to method for funerals among the Iberians, and wealthy individuals were often found in cemeteries with all sorts of lavish goods and funerary sculptures that give us a peek into the fashion and hairstyles of the rich. Interestingly, starting in the 6th century BCE, there was a noticeable drop in the number of recognizable burials, which suggests that these elaborate funeral customs became more exclusive to a small elite. Meanwhile, the fate of the majority, farmers, artisans, soldiers, and laborers, who made up a big chunk of the population, remains a bit of a mystery. It used to be a pretty advanced civilization, but it vanished without a trace. Researchers think it could have been due to some massive earthquake, but so far, we don't know for sure.
It all happened in 1708. On June 8th, the Spanish galleon San Jose was going back home to Spain from the Caribbean. In total, there were 17 ships. The captain of the San Jose knew they were in for some trouble, as English ships were lurking in that area. He knew they would be after the treasure loaded on the ships. The price of the treasure from the New World was so astronomical that it could turn the course of historic events in Europe upside down. In order to be safe, the Spanish galleon was to reach Cartagena de Indias. It's where we have Colombia now. But sadly, other things were predestined for the San Jose. The 4 English ships appeared. The galleon couldn't just escape them. There was no choice but to turn around and fight. Then all the chaos started. Red flags showing that the battle started. Firing cannons, the smell of gunpowder. Nobody knows exactly how it all ended. As dusk fell, it was hard to see clearly what was happening. The only thing that remained in history was the sinking flagship San Jose. Then, silence. No wonder that San Jose, being the flagship, was the most strategically important galleon. She would carry an insane amount of precious metals, such as gold and silver, pearls, and gems, such as emeralds. All of that went to stay on the bottom of the ocean for the next 3 centuries. But how come this lost treasure got so legendary? First off, the financial estimates made by scientists shocked people. The ship reportedly carried 7 million to 12 million pesos. Let's translate that to today's money. Yeah, it may not be the wealth that Elon Musk has, but it's around $10 billion. With that money, you could treat yourself to a couple of private jets, a whole car park of Lamborghinis, and a posh mansion. And you'd still have a lot of money left. You may think it all must have gotten rusty, just like the bits and pieces found in the Titanic. But when it comes to gold, things work differently. The Titanic didn't carry gold, or at least not that much of it. The jewels that were on the Titanic were personal belongings. And the cool thing about gold is that it never reacts with oxygen. It means that real gold won't rust or tarnish. So if your golden necklace got somewhat darker, it's a telltale sign it's not pure gold. It's an alloy, which is also cool, by the way, as you can easily clean it. Going back to San Jose's lost treasure, the golden coins there, even over 300 years later, were supposed to look the same way as the day they were minted. Now, going back to the place where the ship supposedly sank, remember I told you the captain wanted to go to the shore where Colombia is today? Well, on December 4th, 2015, the ship was indeed found in the waters of Colombia. As with many other important things today, the world learned about it from a tweet. It was sent by the Colombian then-president Juan Manuel Santos. People have been looking for the San Jose for decades, and once it was finally found, it only got more popular, and even more myths about it began to appear. One of the legends was told by Señor Santos himself. After the wreck had been found, there was a short radio interview. Thing is, the discovery was pretty unexpected. Many people spent a lot of time and effort looking for that wreck, and many of them even gave up hope of ever finding it. Juan Manuel Santos told a story about how the wreck had been discovered. There was an official event outside Colombia where he was accosted by a man. He looked like the famous writer Hemingway. He sported a white beard and had white hair. The only thing that Hemingway-looking man wanted was 2 minutes of Santos's time. The president conceded and listened to the man. What happened next was unbelievable. The man pulled out an antique map, more precisely, a carefully framed copy, and told the president that no one else knew about it. The man pointed to one exact spot. He said that it was the exact location of the treasure, and that that place didn't appear on any other map. He guaranteed that he knew where the treasure was. The story sounded crazy and swashbuckling. Whoever that man was, he turned out to be right. His identity remains a mystery for everyone, but somehow that man found the funding, determined the area to be inspected, and even made his way to meet the president. Right, the San Jose was stuffed with gold, and whoever found it would get filthy rich for the rest of their life. But let's face it, There's no way an ordinary person could ever discover such a treasure, as it requires too much effort and too much funding. But what if you're into treasure hunting and you want to go and find some treasure chests somewhere? Well, I guess I have a story about ordinary people looking and even eventually finding real treasure. Meet Forrest Fenn, an eccentric millionaire who hid a $1 to $5 million treasure. The exact worth was unidentified. You see, even Mr. Fenn himself said he never tried to appraise it. Inside the chest, there were 265 American gold eagles and double eagles, ancient coins, gold nuggets, you name it. Forrest stashed the chest in the Rocky Mountains and announced the treasure hunt back in 2010. Now let's focus on a map for a little bit and see how vast the Rocky Mountains are. Basically, the treasure hunters were supposed to sweep the two countries, both the USA and Canada. At first, it was a small treasure hunt with only a couple of people who knew about it. But sometime later, there was pretty much a competition, as tens of thousands of people set off to look for the treasure. There was research stating that over the decade, about 350,000 people tried their luck looking for the mystery chest. To announce the hunt, Forrest Fenn used a poem made up of 24 lines. The poem had some hints in it that most treasure hunters failed to decode. It was so well hidden that it took 10 years to finally discover it. There was also a blog called Thrill of the Chase, and on June 6, 2020, Mr. Fenn finally posted the long-awaited news. The treasure had been found. Forrest himself admitted that anyone who read the instructions from the poem carefully could find the treasure. The poem created a lot of buzz on the internet, with many users trying to decode the 9 hints the poem had. Some of them even suggested the possible keys to decode the puzzle. Those speculations might have helped the person who eventually found the treasure. At first, even Forrest Fenn himself didn't know who cracked all the codes in the poem, made it through the dense forest, and retrieved the chest. The lucky finder preferred to stay anonymous, and all we initially knew was that it was a man from the eastern United States. The winner sent a photograph to Forrest Fenn, and thus the treasure hunt was officially over. Sometime later, though, he revealed himself. It was Jack Stewart, a former journalist and medical student. The treasure was hidden under a canopy of stars in a forest in the Rocky Mountains. The vegetation there is lush, so the chest was hidden deep within. The chest had never been moved from the place where it was originally hidden. The exact location is still unknown, but we know that the treasure was hidden in Wyoming. Jack admitted that not all the advertised treasures were found in the chest. A small gold frog on a necklace and a Spanish emerald ring were missing. Forrest indeed found the frog in his collection and gave it to Stewart, but he failed to find the ring. The treasure hunt created by Forrest Fenn may seem extravagant, but he explained why he decided to start it. The only thing he claimed to have in mind was to give people some hope.
Guess what? A treasure that was thought to be lost forever has been found. Back in April 2015, Deep Ocean Search, a team of treasure hunters, recovered 50 million pounds worth of silver rupee coins from the British steamship. The ship sank in the 40s during its journey from India to England. The wreck was found at a whopping depth of almost 17,000 feet, setting a world record for the deepest recovery ever. To put that into perspective, the famous Titanic wreck is only found at a depth of 12,500 feet. But don't be duped. This was no easy feat. The team faced multiple breakdowns of their systems due to the pressure, temperature, and repeated dives at such a depth. Did you hear about the epic treasure found on the Black Swan wreck? It was discovered by Odyssey Marine Exploration in 2007 off Gibraltar, and they hit the jackpot. The salvage team found a whopping 17 tons of coins worth $500 million. Can you even imagine that much money? It's said to be the biggest haul ever found in the treasure hunting world. But the crew didn't spill the beans on where they found it or what kind of coins they uncovered. They just hightailed it back to the US with their loot. Sneaky. An old man in the Dominican Republic was selling a coin that ended up being the oldest coin ever minted in the New World. And that's just the start of the craziest shipwreck story ever. The team at Deep Blue Marine used some fancy sonar to search the area where the coin was found, and they stumbled upon parts of a wrecked ship. They also found jade statues, ancient Mayan bling, and gold coins from way back in 1535. Like, one set of 4 coins alone is worth a cool $1 million. The crew got to keep half of their booty while the Dominican Republic authorities snagged the rest. It's believed the ship sank during a gnarly hurricane just a few years after Columbus discovered the New World. No other shipwreck has ever turned up such ancient artifacts. We all heard about the Titanic, the OG shipwreck, known for its epic tragedy when it hit an iceberg in 1912. But what's even crazier is that $300 million worth of diamonds went down with it. Like, can you imagine? American and French researchers who found the ship auctioned off nearly 6,000 items recovered from the wreck. We're talking diamond bracelets, fancy dishes, and even a postcard a passenger wrote to their parents. Treasures from the Titanic are still popping up for auction. Like, some deck chairs from the first-class promenade deck were auctioned off for £85,000. They're too delicate to sit on now, but still a crazy piece of history. The Schmidts, a family of treasure hunters, just stumbled upon over $1 million worth of gold artifacts in shallow waters only 30 miles north of West Palm Beach. And get this, one of the coins was even meant for the King of Spain. These treasures were part of the 1715 treasure fleet that sank 300 years ago due to a massive hurricane after leaving Havana, Cuba. Can you believe it was only 15 feet deep in the water? They found 51 gold coins and 40 feet of ornate gold chain. Talk about hitting the jackpot. Brent Brisbane, the owner of 1715 Fleet Queen's Jewels, LLC, said those finds were important not just for their monetary value, but their historical importance. But there's more. The ship was recovered over 50 years ago, and divers have only found about $50 million worth of treasure. It's believed that there's still over $400 million worth of treasure hiding below the sea. The ultimate party of exploration just got a little more exciting. We're talking about Vasco da Gama's Esmeralda, the oldest shipwreck from Europe's age of exploration, baby. This bad boy was wrecked in a gnarly storm back in 1503 along the India route from Europe in the Arabian Sea. But wait, it gets better. The wreck was actually found way back in 1998, but it took almost 2 decades to excavate it. And guess what? They found rare coins, a ship bell, and other cool artifacts that confirm the identity of the ship. And the treasures are still being uncovered. Just last year, in 2017, they discovered a unique navigational tool called an astrolabe at the wreck. How cool is that? A bunch of Indonesian fishermen found a super old ship from the 9th century off Belitung Island in 1998. It proved that trading between China and the Middle East was totally a thing back then thanks to the maritime Silk Route. The wreck is so cool that it's also known as the Tang treasure because it's the biggest collection of Chinese Tang Dynasty artifacts ever found in one spot. But there's some serious drama going down over an exhibition of these priceless treasures. It's like a battle between commercial treasure salvage and archaeological preservation of shipwrecks. Who will win? Only time will tell. Meet the holy grail of shipwrecks. It's the Spanish galleon San Jose, and it was loaded with silver, gold, and emeralds worth billions of dollars today. But get this, it sunk after a battle with British ships off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, way back in 1708. Crazy, right? But here's the kicker. 300 years later, in 2015, some awesome peeps discovered the wreck on the ocean floor. The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution used a cool underwater vehicle to identify the ship by its distinctive cannons, and they're still recovering treasure as we speak. So, if you're feeling lucky, keep your eyes peeled for other hidden treasures that haven't been found yet. The ultimate jackpot, the sunken motherlode of the Nuestra Señora de Atocha, was discovered off the coast of Key West, Florida in July 1985. Mel Fisher, the legendary treasure hunter, spent a whopping 16 years searching for it. The Atocha was on a mission to bring back loads of riches to Spain from Havana, Cuba back in 1622, but got caught up in a gnarly hurricane. To celebrate the 30th anniversary of the discovery, there was a sick auction where people could buy pieces of the Atocha's treasure, like gold and emeralds. If you're keen to see more of this epic haul, head to the Mel Fisher Maritime Museum in Key West. The whole shebang is worth around $450 million, no biggie. Hey, have you ever dreamt of finding buried treasure and becoming a millionaire overnight? Well, guess what? It's not just a dream. Meet Forrest Fenn, the man who hid a chest filled with $1 to $5 million worth of treasure in the Rocky Mountains. And get this, it took 10 years for someone to finally find it. Fenn announced the treasure hunt back in 2010, and over the years, tens of thousands of people set off to look for it. The treasure chest was filled with 265 American gold eagles and double eagles, ancient coins, gold nuggets, and more. But finding it wasn't easy. Fenn used a poem with 24 lines that had hints in it, and it took some serious decoding skills to figure out where the treasure was hidden. Finally, in June 2020, the long-awaited news came. The treasure had been found. The lucky winner was Jack Stueff, a former journalist and medical student. The treasure was hidden under a canopy of stars in the forest in the Rocky Mountains, and it was so well hidden that not all the advertised treasures were found in the chest. But don't let that stop you from trying your luck at finding buried treasure. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the next lucky winner. And if you need some inspiration, just remember that Forrest Fenn's only goal was to give people some hope. So why not give it a shot and see what you can find? Who knows, maybe you'll become a millionaire too.
If you come across a well in Portugal, resist the temptation to gaze into its depths. The inverted tower in the enigmatic city of Sintra sends chills through those who encounter it as it spirals down a daunting 88 feet into the underground. It certainly wasn't designed to collect water, yet its true purpose remains a closely guarded secret. Dating back to around 1904, this well could have been involved in a mysterious initiation tradition from the Knights Templar. The Templars had faded into history almost 6 centuries before the construction of this pit, but their enigmatic traditions were revived by later generations. So one theory says that candidates seeking to join the group back then had to confront their deepest fears by facing this well, descending its spiral staircase blindfolded. When they reached the bottom of the inverted tower, they removed their blindfolds and were faced with this frightening sight. The only way out of this dark labyrinth was to keep looking up and following the light. Now imagine yourself browsing the shelves of a used bookstore until you find a book with an alphabet you've never seen before. You decide to use an image translation app but find no matches. Intrigued, you buy the book. Then you show it to your friends and family, but nobody recognizes that alphabet. Rare book dealer Winfried Vonnig probably experienced the same frustration back in 1912 when he acquired what would later become the most enigmatic book in the world. The work is known today as the Voynich manuscript, and it's written entirely in an unknown language that no one has deciphered yet. The pages of this 15th century codex are filled with botanical drawings, but these aren't typical daisies or roses. In fact, they don't resemble any plant species that we know of. What makes things even stranger is the illustrations of unfamiliar constellations and women swimming in green baths. Delving deeper into the realm of mysterious texts, we set off on a journey to the Qumran Caves near the Salt Sea in the Middle East. In 1952, a team of archaeologists stumbled upon 2 scrolls made of highly oxidized copper at the site. Unrolling them was a major challenge, so they decided to cut the scrolls into 23 parts to investigate them. Imagine their surprise to see Hebrew words like gold and silver popping up. But no, it wasn't an ancient invoice. It was more like a treasure map, pointing the way to over $1 million. Unfortunately, the treasure was never found. Not for lack of trying, though. You see, the quest isn't as easy as it may appear. Some of the copper scroll's vocabulary is technical, and some geographical locations remain a mystery. There's also one last possibility. Perhaps it's all a work of fiction, like a pirate tale from the old days. People talk about Mona Lisa's almost haunting stare that seems to follow you no matter where you stand. But here's a quick question. Does she have eyebrows? You got it right if you said no, and her complete lack of eyebrows adds another layer of mystique to her gaze. The most common explanation is that beauty standards were different, and perhaps plucking the hairs above the eyes was a thing around 1503. But take a look at other Italian paintings from that time, like La Schiavona or Portrait of a Young Girl. Yep, eyebrows. So, not everyone was entirely pleased with this theory, like French inventor Pascal Cotte. He spent 3,000 hours analyzing scans of the painting to dig through all the layers of Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece. Now he claims that the Mona Lisa once had eyebrows, but they disappeared over time due to cleanings and restorations. Some historians, however, still question his findings, which means that Mona Lisa's style, or lack of it, remains an unsolved mystery. So, you decide to travel to Rio de Janeiro, and everyone tells you that Sugarloaf Mountain is a must-see. When you spot the mountain from a distance, you realize that the stone has a cavity. But around noon, the whole view changes. The shadow in that cavity takes the shape of a bird, an ibis to be precise. A local legend links this bird shape to the ancient Egyptian deity Thoth, as if the ancient Egyptians once visited Rio de Janeiro and were somehow inspired by the natural phenomenon. But it's probably just a big coincidence. I mean, literally. The real mystery, however, lies in the waters around Sugarloaf Mountain. In the 80s, archaeologist Robert Marks got a tip from locals about a treasure hidden beneath Guanabara Bay. He dove in and found quite a few Roman amphorae. You know, those ancient vases with two handles? His discovery could potentially provide evidence of a Roman shipwreck that might have reached Brazil 17 centuries before the Portuguese even set foot there. However, he couldn't proceed with his research, and to this day, the idea of the Roman presence on Brazil's coast remains uncertain. The true location of Cleopatra's tomb isn't the only ancient Egyptian mystery. Many secrets are carved into the walls of ancient structures, like in the Temple of Seti I. Take a close look at this hieroglyph, and you'll notice that it resembles a modern-day helicopter. Look to the right, and you'll see an engraving that looks like a submarine. Odd, right? The most reasonable explanation for this has to do with the legacies of different rulers. When a new pharaoh came to power, they had their own hieroglyphs added over the original ones. But this is still a topic of debate, as some Egyptologists believe that these mysterious hieroglyphs may represent some kind of ancient technology. The same applies to the Dendera light. The image found in the underground passageway of the Hathor Temple is a subject of significant controversy in Egyptian history. Some researchers suggest that the inscription simply represents a rising sun, while others interpret it as evidence of some kind of modern lighting system. And it does indeed resemble Crookes' tube, one of the early experiments with electrical discharges. Although there's no concrete evidence of ancient Egyptians having modern electricity, some historians believe that this theory could help explain why many discovered tombs don't have any residues left behind from the use of oil lamps or candles. A lot has been said about the mysterious pyramids of Egypt, but many people tend to forget that other inexplicable structures had already existed even before them. Our next stop takes us to Turkey. The top of a hill known as Göbekli Tepe, near the city of Urfa, holds an ancient secret. It features more than 20 circular stone enclosures dated back over 11,000 years. Many of these have heavily carved stone T-shaped pillars adorned with eerie human figures with folded hands. The most accepted theory is that it's the world's first temple, likely used for rituals or social events. But the greatest mystery lies in how it was built, as this site existed before the domestication of animals or the use of metal tools. So the construction must have been very difficult, challenging our understanding of the historical timeline. Now, I hope you're not afraid of heights, because we're about to take a flight over the Nazca Lines. You've probably already heard about these massive, mysterious drawings etched into an arid region of Peru. They come in many different shapes, like a spider, a monkey, and even a Google-eyed ET that is probably just a fissure. Anyway, this story got some fresh chapters in 2022 when an additional 168 new drawings were discovered. The original ones could only be seen from the air, but these new ones are much smaller and can be observed from the ground. However, one thing they have in common is that their purpose remains totally unclear. Some might call them the largest-scale calendar in the world. Others suggest that they served as a tool for agricultural purposes. Of course, many theories have emerged in an attempt to give the Nazca Lines a meaning, but the truth is that they remain some of the most important unsolved mysteries in history. So, if you still haven't made your fortune, don't be too sad. There are huge amounts of money out there longing to be discovered. Look at this humble Chinese villager. At 51 years old, he accidentally made 4 million won, which is over $600,000, without doing anything special. The thing is, he and his son just found it in a pig while doing their basic chores they would do every single day. The stone they found inside the pig is called bezoar, and I bet you've never heard of it before. It's not common in the West, but it's a big deal in traditional Chinese medicine. If you look at this stone, you may think it's ew. This 4-inch long, 2.7-inch wide treasure is hairy and looks a bit gross at first glance, and it doesn't get better. After discovering the stone, the father and the son took it to Shanghai for an appraisal, and it cost them around $6,000. But still, the initial expenses don't seem so big, considering they're a mere 1% of what that stone is worth. Now, not everything in an animal's belly is going to make you rich. Only the gallbladder stuff is real gold. I know that women can buy themselves flowers and write their names in the sand, but let's face it, women just love it when we offer them fancy bouquets. Still, today, it's much easier to do than it was in the 17th century. Back then, an average Joe would have to slave his way to afford just one flower. Somewhere around the 1630s, there was a tulip mania, where tulip bulbs cost more than gold. Okay, the price wasn't real. It was a speculative bubble way before all the other economic drama we see today. We just haven't learned our lesson yet. Back at that time, a single tulip bulb was sold for more than what a skilled artisan made in an entire year. And it wasn't just any tulip bulb. We're talking about bulbs with fancy colors and patterns that were rare and sought after. The tulip market was like the stock market at the time, with traders making deals in taverns and signing contracts with each other. It was all about supply and demand. And just like with any bubble, prices eventually crashed in February 1637, leaving everyone with empty pockets, scratching their heads, and feeling ill. Meanwhile, speaking of feeling under the weather, back in 15th century Europe, people turned to Egyptian mummies for relief from headaches, stomach issues, and even more serious conditions modern medicine still can't beat today. Embalmed bodies were thought to have some magical healing powers. But why did folks eat mummies in the first place? Well, it all started with a mix-up in translations. There was a substance called mumia that was considered super valuable for its healing properties. But when Western Europeans got wind of it through letters from other nations, they mistakenly thought it came from Egyptian mummies. This led to a whole fashion of medical mummy eating. People believed that consuming parts of mummies could cure all sorts of ailments. So they started raiding Egyptian tombs and selling mummies like hotcakes. Demand was so high that some shady characters even started making fake mummies out of… Trust me, you don't want to know it. I'll leave it to your imagination. But you can write your ideas in the comments. Fast forward to the Victorian era, and the enthusiasm with mummies was at an all-time high. Egyptomania was in full swing, with mummy unwrapping parties becoming a popular pastime. It wasn't until the late 19th century that the use of mumia finally fizzled out. One day, A dead sperm whale washed up on a beach in La Palma, Spain, and a professor was sent on a mission to crack the case of the animal's demise. Amidst crashing waves and the massive carcass, he stumbled upon a surprising revelation: a hefty 21-pound stone stuck at its intestines. But this was no ordinary rock. Valued at 500,000 euros, which is over $545,000, it turned out to be ambergris, also known as floating gold. Legend has it that this funky substance can be found floating in the sea or rarely washed up on beaches. It was discovered in the 1800s. It's actually formed from the indigestible bits sperm whales gobble up while feasting on squid, like their beaks. Over time, perhaps years, these bits clump together in their intestines, almost like a kidney stone, to create this valuable lump of ambergris. Now, you may ask yourself why a sperm whale's excretion costs way more than your house. But the answer is simple. It just smells good. Okay, it's not good. It smells divine. The aroma ranges from sweet to musky tones, and perfume makers go bananas for this stuff as it helps fragrances last longer. The more a substance called amberin it contains, the pricier it gets. And the color matters too. Black means less amberin, while white packs a punch. Cheaper options opt for synthetic alternatives, but top-notch perfumes go for the real deal. While using ambergris in perfumes is a no-go in the US, the French still adore this magical ingredient. By the way, over $500,000 is not a limit here. Some lucky fishers once scored a chunk of ambergris worth $1.5 million in the Gulf of Aden. Those sperm whales sure have some fancy intestines, huh? Now, next time you go grocery shopping, do not complain about prices, okay? At least you can easily afford any spice out there. Your many times great-grandfather somewhere in the Middle Ages wouldn't believe you that cinnamon and black pepper can be that affordable. Spices were worth their weight in gold and gems, driving the economy like nobody's business. Back in the day, food went bad faster than milk in the sun, so spices were a hot commodity to cover up that not-so-fresh flavor. European nations wanted to control the spice trade, which led to crazy expeditions to India and other Asian lands. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, Spanish, and English were all fighting for spice domination, setting up shop and making a mint along the way. Now, on to the exact prices. Back in 1393, saffron was as pricey as a horse, ginger as much as a sheep, and mace as costly as a cow. And a pound of nutmeg was worth 7 fat oxen in medieval Germany. That black pepper that we take for granted today wasn't just for seasoning. Peppercorns were actually used as currency in Europe. Towns kept their books in pepper. Brides got pepper as part of their dowry, and some landlords even accepted peppercorn rent. May I cover my utility bills this month with this fancy packet of cinnamon, sir? No? What? You think I should go out and get an actual job? Okay. Hey, that's a nice t-shirt, but does it come in purple? What? It'll cost 10 times more in this color? Now this one may sound insane to modern people spoiled by the variety we've got today, but if the shopping malls we know today existed many centuries ago, that would be a common thing. Making Tyrian purple dye was such a chore that it cost a pretty penny. It's rumored that purple dye was as valuable as silver. This led to purple fabrics becoming symbols of status, with fancy laws dictating who could wear them. Big-shot Roman leaders flaunted their importance by wearing white togas trimmed in Tyrian purple, while victorious generals rocked the grandest toga of them all, solid purple with shiny gold embellishments. Fast forward to the 4th century, and it was basically illegal for anyone in Rome to sport Tyrian purple except for the emperor. That's how exclusive it was. In fact, saying someone donned the purple came to mean they became emperor. The Byzantine Empire took tight control over Tyrian purple production, using it solely for their fancy silk fabrics. Fun fact, if a royal kid was born, they were literally born in the purple. But I digress. Tyrian purple may have been worn by the nobility, but the origins of this fancy dye are far from being noble. It came from the slimy stuff of 3 different sea snails. Each snail made a unique hue. One of them gave us a bluish purple, another one rocked a reddish purple, and there was even a snail that could help make a vibrant red dye.